All right. Great to see you all. So many familiar faces in the crowd, and all of us that love data in some way, shape, or form, and what we need to do with it. I'm going to talk. The title for this talk was a little bit of a bait and switch. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that we've done at Tamer that saved one of the largest industrial companies in the world over $250 million using data very strategically. But I also want to talk about data in the biopharmaceutical industry because I actually think that a lot of what's been going on in big data over the last 15 years is really a reflection of things that we've been working on in the life sciences, in bio and cheminformatics for many, many decades, as my friend Michelle Erb will no doubt validate. There's going to be a little bit of Tamer stuff in here, but as a background, I'm a former CIO, former software engineer, and I've built systems from scratch for end users at places like Infinity Pharmaceuticals. These are my buddies from Infinity. And over at Novartis, where it was really, very large, lots of legacy systems. And then also built products that are used, as third-party tools by folks like my friends at Novartis and Infinity. Most notably, probably this product called Vertica Systems that my partner Mike Stonebreaker and I started from scratch in 2004. And is now one of kind of the leading column-oriented databases. Mike and I, our mission at Vertica was to prove that one size does not fit all in database systems. And many of you here in this room, and we all sort of now have all these choices of all these different systems. I don't know, some folks in the room may remember back in 2000, if you didn't buy Oracle or SQL Server or DB2 or something, you were kind of screwy in the head. And so it's nice to have a lot of choices now, and thanks in large part to folks like Osama, and the folks at Yahoo, and all of the NoSQL movement. So in addition to this, I also do a lot of startup stuff. I have a seed fund and stuff, and so I see these patterns in data engineering and data science, not only in really big companies, which are a lot of our customers at Tamer, but also across really innovative new young companies that are doing cutting edge things. And much like Osama said, there's this really interesting dynamic going on between big and small companies and how data is used. And both sides can learn from each other. Young, small companies can learn a lot from big companies about how you do things at scale, and the big companies can learn a lot from small companies about how you do things really, really quickly. As Jeff Immelt at GE likes to say, big and fast beats big and slow and small and fast. And I think that's more true today than ever. So back to this point, I really believe healthcare and biopharma is the front line for the next generation of data management. And we're going to talk a little bit here. Again, Osama couldn't have set me up any better. We believe that most data out there in the world is incredibly dirty, incredibly ugly, and needs to be managed in some kind of a different way. And I've experienced this firsthand in healthcare and biopharmaceuticals. And so I want to talk about a couple of examples, things we're working on at Tamer, and to kind of bring this out. But as a little history, my partner Mike and I, last year won the Turing Award, and he's been in the database industry forever, and so we're kind of a couple of old database people. And so we've seen these design patterns over and over again. One of the design patterns that we saw very, very clearly at Vertica and across many of the companies we work with was, just like Osama said, ETL is a huge unsolved problem. And when I say ETL, that may mean to a lot of people products like Informatica or Talend or Jasper, whatever. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how you figure out how your data should be connected across a broad variety, and whether you call these, these dumping grounds of data swamps that people have, or whether you look at somebody's Oracle instances, they got 20 instances and hundreds of databases in every instance and hundreds of tables in every database. You're like, well, how are we going to sort all that stuff out? We have to get better at doing that in some way, shape, or form. So again, my co-founders, Mike Stonebreaker and Jerry Held, who was the CTO at Tandem for many years. And we've worked with a whole bunch of customers. We have some great venture backing and all this kind of crazy stuff. But what we really like doing is working with our customers and solving their problems. And most of our focus at Tamer has been on this structured data. And I think that open data is kind of an interesting thing, because you say, well, what is sort of open data? For me, it's changing every day because I believe that data is being commoditized very, very quickly. And so what was closed data or proprietary data 2 or 3 years ago is now open and available and cheap for everyone. And so our focus at Tamer is really trying to help people organize and unify and pre-prepare all the structured data that exists inside their organization and all the data sources that are outside their organization that they may want to take advantage of. And this really comes down to two simple things. And anybody that's been in database systems for a long time sees the same patterns, right? There's only 5 or 6 real problems in computer science, and we keep solving them over and over again. So the problem that we solve at Tamer is really focused on attribute mapping and record matching. And doing this at very, very large scale. So one of my favorite examples is the Hive instance at Facebook, which when you crack that open, there's more than 10,000 schemas in there. And oh, by the way, you're just looking for one attribute. Where do you start? I have no idea. We really have to figure out how to use the machine to sort that out, to recommend the attributes that are most interesting and most relevant to whatever analysis it is you're trying to do or whatever application you're trying to build. And so Mike and I have really focused on pushing the envelope on schema mapping and record matching at very, very, very large scale. So a lot of times this sort of, you can see, we believe that this is not just a machine problem, that if you're going to do data curation at very large scale, that you also have to involve humans, but you involve humans after. The role of the traditional data architect saying, I am the person that maps these attributes to these attributes, and that shall always be so, and so be it in the one schema to rule them all, right? Like, that's just crazy, right? The world doesn't work that way. We need to start treating our data and our data sources more like we treat websites on the modern web. They need to be crawled, they need to be inspected, and then you need to use machine learning to sort of interrogate how they might be connected, and then you use the human effort to actually tune and tweak those models. A probabilistic approach to ETL is at the core of what we believe at Tamer. And then you can use this stuff for lots of different examples. There's lots of ways, you may use it right into some visualization package. You may build it into a model with a tool like RapidMiner or DataRobot. You may just start publishing this stuff into SharePoint because we all own it for whatever reason. And more importantly, you need to have, my good friend Joey Hellerstein over at Trifacta always says, the enterprise needs a vendor-independent, right, metadata repository. You need a place where you can go and say, well, what are all the attributes across all these different things? And any of these big vendors that say, well, you just put everything in IBM and it's all going to be like, no. We need a vendor-neutral place where we can keep this metadata. And we think that that's going to happen. So one of the first projects that we worked on was over at Novartis, again, with my good friend Michelle down here. And this is a really ugly data set. There were more than 15,000 tables in this Oracle database. These were biological assay data that had been uploaded into this database over many years. And there was this desire to get a unified view of what attributes in that, across those 15,000 data sources are unique. And there were more than 100,000 unique attributes in that data set. And there was also kind of interest in doing some anomaly detection, wanted to detect things where people had made mistake in terms of units. Somebody entered millimolar instead of micromolar. And you can kind of detect these things if you go at it with the right models. And there's all these scientists that are interested in consuming this data in some way, shape, or form. But our goal was to see if we could actually use this machine-driven, human-guided approach to sort through and do the schema mapping across all of these 15,000 sources. And we were pretty successful. We were able to do as well, if not a little bit better than a whole team of 10 manual people kind of going through and doing this manual schema mapping would do. We used to call that job dung beetle patrol. Because it was, like people that are doing it manually, like sit there with 5 spreadsheets open. They're like, what does that attribute line up with this other attribute? I mean, it's really like, pushing crap around all day. So I was like, we don't want people to have to do that. Like, that's ridiculous. And of course, if you're trying to manage data at very large scale and across a big organization, throwing people at it like that is just never going to work. And so when Mike and I do a project, we start with an academic team. We start to develop the thing, we publish a paper, and then we start looking for commercial applications. This was one of the first commercial applications that gave us the indication that, wow, we think we can actually use this design pattern to solve real problems in industry. And then over time, we discovered a number of other uses for this kind of capability. One of the most obvious is this supporting this data standard that's called CDISC. So biopharmaceutical companies have to submit data from their clinical trials to the FDA. They have to do it in this form that's called CDISC. And getting the data into that form so that you can submit it to the FDA requires taking the data from SAS, so a bunch of ugly SAS files, and monging it, turning it, and then getting it into this standard. And using Tamer, we've been able to actually automate that process of extracting the attributes from those files that are very messy, very dirty, converting them, getting them into the standard form that you need. And so instead of paying millions of dollars for SAS consultants to do this manually and unpredictably every single year, you just have a simple drag and drop interface where you can, put these studies into CDISC. It works really well, and we're doing this at places like Amgen and GSK and many others now. When you do that, when you start to sort of go through this process of cleaning up these ugly data files in an automated way, you realize it's also a very good source of data for your structured analytical systems, right? And so in this case, it's a translational research data warehouse where you take this clean CDISC data and you just put it into your warehouse. In addition to sort of supporting the operational objectives of getting your stuff submitted to the FDA, you're also creating this clean and relatively unified repository that people can use to do analytics on. Then if you start doing this, you realize very quickly that you can actually start integrating external data. There's a big project that we did of bringing external clinical study data in and matching it against the internal clinical study data in a company, and allowed them to create this very simple, very clean, competitive view of all the clinical studies going on in this one indication. It's a very simple chart, and I think that if you do this data unification and data prep really, really well, it results in analytics that are very, very simple, right? The output looks clean. The output looks fresh, right? The opposite is probably what you do if you take an extract from a bunch of your data warehouses and just throw it up in Tableau. We all know, right? The classification's all wrong. You have to go back, put it back, and rejigger it. We think all that kind of work should be done automatically for you in advance. The other thing that's really good, and Usama mentioned Waterline, very similar kind of a thing with Tamer. We do a lot of data cataloging, where what are all the data assets that exist in your company? The question that I love to ask CIOs, having been one, is you're the CIO, right? Right. You're like the CFO, but for information, right? Yeah. Well, I go to the CFO and I ask them, show me where your money comes from, what money do you have, and where is your money spent? Right? All right, Mr. CIO, tell me, where does your information come from? What information do you have? And where is it consumed? Crickets, right? If we really believe that data is an asset, if we really believe that it is this precious thing and that it's going to be used analytically to transform these companies, we have to start treating it like an asset. If you don't know what you have locked in, all of these Oracle databases and all these spreadsheets, if you don't even have an inventory, that's freaking wrong. It has to change. And now we're getting some tools out there like Tamer, Waterline, many others that are going to help you do this and get this stuff organized. But it's time to unlock this data from all these different data silos. And that has the benefit of then treating the data as an asset and preventing things like data hoarding and all that crap. So this data curation problem, again, back to this sort of interplay between, having done a bunch of work at big pharmaceutical companies, you look at a company like Flatiron, which is kind of a big up-and-coming young biopharmaceutical company. They have data curation at the center of what they do at Flatiron. They've built some really cool data curation systems. And so companies in this very old line industry where kind of most people in the biopharmaceutical industry think of the work that goes on the ground. It happens in a chemistry hood or on the table in running biological assays. Well, this is a state-of-the-art cancer company. And they really view their data as an asset, and curation is kind of a core part of what they do, mapping data in and between all the different data sources that they use. So back to this point, I think of the average enterprise, big enterprises, sort of generating this random data salad. every single day. And you can talk to any one person in one of these big companies and be like, oh no, but my data is organized and I run it. And you say, oh, okay, well now your company, like, this happened to GE went out and bought Alstrom. You said, oh yeah, you had everything organized in this thing and now you just bought this other company. So now you have an integrated view across all of it? Oh no, but that's going to take 5 years to integrate all their data. Like, we need to get more dynamic about this. We have to embrace the idea that data variety in the enterprises is this dirty little secret. And it's time for us to embrace that and say, you know what, it's always going to be a mess. The data is always going to be a mess. And if you leave it a mess, you spend all your time preparing the data and you don't have any time to do analytics. And you can use these traditional approaches. You can try and standardize your data like crazy. You can try and aggregate it, and we're going to have the one data warehouse to rule them all. We're going to try and do a federated approach, use systems like Composite, right, or other cool new ones that are out there. Or we're going to top-down model all this stuff in MDM, and we're going to discipline everybody. All those things are good, but when you look at the next-gen challenges that we all have facing us, there's no way we're going to get to these next-gen capabilities, the kind of capabilities that the average internet company has, unless we sort of embrace something else, a different approach. That approach, we think, is to treat these data sources like websites. The same way that Google goes out and indexes websites, we at Tamer believe that the right thing to do is to go out and you essentially index these data sources. And you use next-gen schema mapping and record matching to connect and create the indexes across all these different data sources. And if you do, what you can create are experiences that are as simple as some of the experiences that are being created on the modern web today. So this is an example of a simple web search, right? Who loves J.J. Abrams? Like everybody, right? It rocks. So 10 years ago, if you had done a sort of 5 years ago, you had done a search on Google, on the left hand, you would have only gotten what's on the left-hand side of this screen, right? Just normal unstructured search results. Today, what you get on Google is this info box on the right-hand side. Why do you get that info box? Because Google's been working on Knowledge Graph for the last 5+ years, and now they can actually anticipate what your needs are. And you don't just need a list of links to unstructured text. You actually are interested and desirous of this structured data. Structured and unstructured data is coming together very, very quickly. These expectations that are being set on the modern web are going to be translated into the expectations of workers when they come into the office every morning. And every person that works in a large enterprise and does data science and does data engineering and delivers analytics is going to be expected to provide a similar kind of a capability. And to do that, you have to get really good at things like disambiguation, schema mapping, and record matching. This is a simple example from the biopharmaceutical industry. This wonder, I'm a type 2 diabetic, so I kind of do everything in context of my medical problems. So this is a great drug, and then you look and you say, well, it should be more like, the info box on Google isn't that good, and so you really should have something that looks more like Wikipedia. And then we're all stuck, many of us in the enterprise are stuck with SharePoint, and so a logical thing to do is insert a entity-oriented search box into SharePoint that gives you this, by entity, the very specific results, and then gives you an info box on the right-hand side inside of your internal intranet that looks and feels something like an info box on Google. And if you don't have access to something, then you can click this, quick request access button. So unlike the web, we have the ACLs, right? Access control we have to worry about inside of companies. And then you have this place where you can actually submit that request. So instead of making a call to dozens and dozens of database people, you can just, request data access automatically. And this is the kind of experience that we expect to have. In addition, there's a little button down at the bottom. You click on, just like a Google info box, you click on the feedback button, and that allows you then to provide feedback as to what the data in this info box is or is not, and what needs to be fixed and what doesn't. So it's a very kind of modern experience. So at Tamer, we do this sort of catalog, connect, publish, and then enable people to provide feedback. This is a model that one of our biopharmaceutical customers is using. This is our mutual friend Mark Schreiber over at Merck. And this sort of next-gen approach to modeling and delivering data from the point of creation all the way through to the end and enriching it along the way, I think is a really very repeatable pattern and one that's very, very powerful. So Lots of other use cases for doing this very simple thing of record schema mapping and record matching. These are just a sample of things that that we're doing in the life science industry. All kinds of cool applications. And then let me get back now and talk for a few minutes about this industrial company that we've worked with. Oh, I can't wander. Okay. This is a very large Global 2000 company, and the data that they were trying to analyze was all the procurement data across the entire company. And this analytic they were trying to do was very, very simple. They were just merely trying to figure out if they're getting the best price every time they buy something at this company. In order to do that, they had to integrate data from 4,000 plus procurement catalogs. As they did this, they suspected that there was a large quantity of money that they were spending needlessly. Turns out that in the first 12 months, that the amount of money that they were spending, just overspent, kind of the way we buy coffee, was to the tune of $80 million. In the next 12 months, it was another $300 million. In the upcoming 18 months, they anticipate there'll be another $600 million. And so there are a lot of us in the data science community that talk about how you create value for companies through analytics and all this kind of thing. Let me tell you, it's actually possible, right? And one of the most important things that you need to do is not build the next cool machine learning model to do some analysis. Sometimes all you have to do is clean and organize and integrate the data. Just like Usama said, if you start there and get the first principles right, there are literally hundreds of millions of dollars to be saved in these large companies. And as we all look to how we're going to justify doing projects and continuing investment in cool new technologies and cool new projects, especially with open data, bringing open data in, which is one of the things we're doing at this company now, bringing in all this third party and much of it open data, that the value to be gleaned is not measured in single-digit millions or double-digit, but even triple-digit millions of dollars. And so, again, I've been on both the buying and the selling side of these kinds of technologies in all kinds of ways, and I'm a big advocate of open source projects. My partner Mike and I have started 3 open source projects ourselves in the last 10 years. And but the way that these technologies and the things that we want to do are going to get funded and are going to get developed at very large scale, much the way that Hadoop and MapReduce was developed initially with all the support from Yahoo and Google and many others, is we need these business cases inside of these companies to become clear and obvious. And when it becomes clear that you can save hundreds of millions of dollars just by organizing your data in a more disciplined way and doing some very basic modeling, the CEOs of these large companies are going to start to pay attention, and the amount of money that they invest in this is going to go through the roof. And I know that's the case because I've experienced that myself. And so I believe we're in the very early days of the liberation of data, and especially open data. And it's really for folks like Mike and I that have been in and around the data community for a long time. We really think this is a renaissance. The time has come. And so systems like Postgres that my partner was a part of building, or like Vertica that we built a little while ago, this is just the very start. This is the very basic building blocks, and we're really looking forward to kind of moving forward. And we hope that all of you have a chance to sort of embrace some of these cool new technologies that are coming out in and around unifying and preparing data and making it cleaner. So that we can make everybody an analyst in some way, shape, or form. Okay, I'll be outside, I guess, if my handler's not here anymore. So, and I'm probably in between you and lunch. So, thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate the time, and thanks.